Welcome to episode 13 of the Party Wagon podcast. We talk about all things TMNT, past, present, and future. I'm your host, Brendan, from the YouTube channel Brendan's Rambles.
And I'm Eric from the YouTube channel Know You Grow Up. And we have some of the biggest news we've had in a long time. So just recently, a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cereal got put in stores.
That's big. That's big. They haven't had that since 89, I think, right?
Yeah. It is kind of just awesome because, again, I can't remember past releases if we've gotten anything like this, but I don't know. I feel like when you get a cereal, you're doing something right. I feel like they're really trying to get back out there in the public eye again.
That's how you can tell we're like 80s babies, because in our mind, it's like, oh, you got a cereal? You're a franchise that's got it made. Because we remember, like, you know, Nintendo cereal system and the TMNT cereal and the Swedish Chef Crunchy Stars and all that stuff. Yeah, the cereal, I don't think I'd like it because I looked at it and it looks like Pops, and I think Pops are disgusting.
So not only that, it's Pops with marshmallows, and I still eat a ton of cereal. Like, it's why a bowl of cereal. I ate one right before I started this. Like, I eat at least one bowl of cereal every day, and I still really like the kids' sugary cereals. Like, I still love Trix and Fruity Pebbles and Cookie Crisp and all that stuff. But the one thing that I have definitely lost touch with is marshmallows. I don't know what it is, but I just don't enjoy them as much as I used to. I bought a box of Lucky Charms when they had those special boxes where you could just get all the marshmallows, and I brought them home, and I'm like, I'm going to make the greatest bowl of cereal I've ever had in my entire life. So it was like 75% marshmallows. And I was extremely disappointed. Like, it really like crushed my soul how disappointed I was.
Did you feel sick afterwards?
No, because I eat like crap, so I have a gut of steel. Like, every weekend, I probably consume 1,000 grams of sugar easily.
I eat a lot of crap too. But no, Fruity Pebbles are freaking awesome. Fruity and Cocoa Pebbles. Cocoa Pebbles. Usually chocolate cereals are disappointing. They don't really taste like chocolate, but Cocoa Pebbles are top tier. Cocoa Pebbles, then Count Chocula. Count Chocula is, you know, that's great stuff.
I feel like they're almost the same. Aren't they both just chocolate Rice Krispies pretty much?
No, Count Chocula is like little bats.
Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah. I guess I haven't had Count Chocula in years, so it
has marshmallows also, actually, like little chocolate flavored marshmallows. But usually the marshmallows are gross. But yeah, Pops and Kicks, like, those things grossed me out as a kid. They're like just corn flavored balls, and it's like just throwing marshmallows, and there's actually grosser.
Yeah, exactly. It just doesn't look for me. I will get a bowl. I will eat it just because it exists, but I'm not looking super forward to it.
I still want
to get a box to hang on to just for the hell of it. So
yeah, I actually want to get a box of like the vintage turtle cereal that I used to eat. That was garbage too. It was like Chex with like a bunch of little crap thrown in it. I don't like Chex either. But yeah, if this is good, like if I like the new movie, I'll just keep the box and put it in my room or something.
Yeah, exactly.
But speaking of Mutant Mayhem, there is some actual really big news for Mutant Mayhem. Not like super official. It's kind of been like thrown around. Like, it is official, but like they're not making a big announcement about it. I guess not until after the movie comes out. But there is going to be an animated TV series or like streaming series based on the world of Mutant Mayhem, and that's what that trademark was they put in for the name Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Next Chapter, that everyone thought was going to be the name of Mutant Mayhem, is like we think that's actually the name of this show. So
yeah, and I had heard, like, even back in the, like, before this movie had like even gotten shown, I heard rumors that they basically had a couple villain movies planned for.
Those are still happening.
Yeah, and I think they're going to Paramount Plus.
Yeah.
And then that's what I heard, is if everything went well, that kind of was the ultimate plan, if this went well, to make it the next ongoing series.
Yeah, they said the villain movies are still happening and the animated series is happening. So like, if this movie bombs, they'll probably cancel a lot of those things. But if it's a big success or even a moderate success, I think it's safe to say these will be the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for Generation Z.
I definitely think so. I can't even remember back when the Michael Bay movies were coming out really well, but I don't remember there being as much public talk about it as there is now. Like, I feel like everybody was more so just like how much Bay was changing the turtles is what a lot of the news was about. But
It's all rage. Yeah.
yeah, with this, it just seems like excitement coming from almost all angles. Because I'm pretty sure there was also just a test screening that wasn't the full movie, but it was a huge chunk of it. And apparently it reviewed so well that they brought the director in for the standing ovation or
Oh,
whatever.
wow.
So
I
yeah,
didn't even hear about that.
yeah, I can't remember where I heard that from, but it wasn't the full movie, but it was a huge chunk of it or something like that. So, and again, just based off this trailer, like the full trailer that it showed, like I said, I was very skeptic before that last trailer. And after seeing that last trailer, I'm like, okay, like I'm feeling this. Like it brought me from just being like, I'm excited because there's a turtle movie coming out to I'm excited because I think this is going to be a good turtle movie.
Yeah. I think it's also very smart of them to make the current animated series running, the movies running, and everything all the same universe and same art style and same type of turtles. Because that was a problem with a lot of past versions of the turtles. Is like the 1991 was, it was very different from the 87 cartoon, but it was close enough where it felt like there was a synergy between the two of them. And even then, like Toka and Razar showed up in the cartoon and stuff. And but in 2003 and TMNT 2007, which we'll talk about later, those had no synergy whatsoever. And then, worst of all, I mean, when you had the 2012 cartoon, you had the Michael Bay movies, which like absolutely no synergy whatsoever between the two of them. And then Rise had no synergy with the Bay movies either. So like you just had like three scattered versions of the Turtles in video form at that time. So I think getting back to like the movies, even if the cartoon show, the animation isn't quite as good as the movie, which I don't expect it to be, that style, those versions of the Turtles being the same throughout, I think that will be a good idea, because then it will get kids familiar with these characters across all different versions. Where I think a lot of kids who liked the 2012 cartoon probably didn't like the Bay movies because they were like, oh, where's this? Where's that? Why doesn't Don like April? Why, like, what's like, where's all this stuff from the 2012 cartoon? Like, who the hell are, these turtles? So I think that they're doing a good job by keeping it all like, one universe.
Yeah, I think that is a really smart play. And the 2012 to Michael Bay movies is a really good like comparison, because I can't think of like two more opposite turtles that were going on at the same time. And you're right, when we were a kid, even though like the cartoon turtles were different from the movie turtles, it all felt like our turtles, you know what I mean? To where I feel like the Michael Bay turtles really were an attempt to be adult turtles, and it wasn't really made for kids. So I feel like it really wasn't, it really was kind of splitting the camps, even though nobody really liked the Bay movies a whole lot anyway. But like, I feel like this will get everybody together because it's going to be for everybody. It's going to be made towards kids, but it should hit that nostalgia that we're all looking for in the right way. And I mean, even though it's not going to be our turtles, like I do really have really high hopes that maybe I could get my second favorite turtles now at this point. So
that'd be cool.
I think you're right. I think it's a good idea bringing the whole shebang together, action figures, movies. And if they did a video game for the, fourth angle, that would be great too.
Yeah. And, it's definitely like, not to get too hung up on the Bay movies. That's a really good point, is that like the first one didn't feel like it was really being made for kids at all. And then the second one, the tone was very much for kids, but all the references were for people in their 30s and 40s. So it was like, I don't think like adults thought the second one was too stupid to get into, and then kids just didn't get it because like they didn't grow up with the 87 cartoon. So yeah, like they definitely need some brand recognition all across the board. And I think that's what they're doing. And I commend them for that. Good job.
Yeah, totally agree. I'm happy with what we're seeing now, and I'm glad too, because when we first started this podcast, that's a lot of what we were talking about, is like, what is the future of Turtles? What is Playmates doing? What is the next cartoon that's coming? And very rapidly, we're figuring it all out, and it seems well thought out. It seems like a very strategized play. Like, it was really surprising to me how early they bailed on Rise. Like that, to go 2 seasons and then a movie was very shocking. You know what I mean? And I mean, I feel like there had to have been years of work put into that series, probably more than what it lasted for. So I'm glad in this interim, they haven't just been sitting around doing nothing. Like, it really does seem like they've been working hard to make a valiant attempt to bring Turtles back.
Yeah, for sure. And it almost seems like, you know, the Bay series was supposed to be a trilogy at least, and that got a hard reset. Rise was supposed to be the new iteration of Turtles, and that got a hard reset. It seems like this new version, the Mutant Mayhem verse, I guess we'll call it, it seems like this was like a very calculated approach, because they were like, okay, we had to just cut the movies short, cut the animated series short, because they weren't working, they weren't getting fans to, you know, come on board. And I know Rise has its fans, and I know there's like a couple Platinum Dunes fans out there, but like I think like they realized like we need to come up with something that will really succeed for Turtles. And it seems like this big, like, you know, triple threat of toys, movies, and animated series that are all in this one universe. And again, like you said, like tailor-made to appeal to kids and old fans. It seems like they took some time to just kill whatever they were working on and just really reevaluate what makes the brand popular and what people like from it. And I think when they saw a bunch of us 30-something, 40-something year old fans going freaking nuts buying all these Super 7 and NECA figures of these characters that they probably didn't think anyone remembered, they were probably like, okay, that's a big selling point. That's our older audience. That's who we have to appeal to with our older audience. And then, you know, younger audiences just, you know, look at what popular kids movies are out. I don't know. Maybe they watched Minions Rise of Gru and they're like, we got to do that. But although I think they watched Spider-Verse and they said, we got to do that. That's what it feels like. But
without a doubt, that is 100%, like, I would say the biggest inspiration for the style of this movie. Like, there's no question about it. And that's fine, because I enjoyed that style very much. And I don't mind, like, they're kind of trying to jack their swagger a little bit there. Like, it doesn't really bother me, because again, it's Turtles. I'm happy they're doing something great like that. And I think you're right. I think Viacom woke up by this Turtles resurgence that's basically been led by people in their mid to late 30s to early 40s. Like, I think Turtles sales for the last 3 years probably were more than the 10 years before it put together by a long shot. Like,
I'd say
and
so,
I think they realized that's what's driving it. And like you said, it's the perfect time, because most normal, well-adjusted adults have kids that are about the right ages to see this movie, even though we don't.
Yeah.
A lot of people do. So it's a great time for everybody that's in the peak of this nostalgia and this excitement to really push it on their kids. And something I'm thinking about as we're talking about this right now, it's going to be a really big bummer if a bunch of adults just buy all the action figures off the shelves and kids can't get them. And then it turns into a situation where, like, all the kids get bummed on it because they can't get any of the toys they want.
That might happen. That's kind of the world we live in now. But
because
I don't know. I think, judging on like what, you know, they did that new CG He-Man and the Masters of the Universe show on Netflix, not the Kevin Smith thing, the one aimed towards kids, where it was like very different. Those toys were very abundant, and they were all over store shelves. So like, I don't think that this new version is going to sell out that much unless adults really like the movie. I don't know, because Turtles and toys have always just gone hand in hand. So I don't know. I really can't tell, but I'm optimistic. I think they'll be on store shelves, well stocked all summer at least.
So here's the other thing about that. So the Masters of the Universe, in the toy aisle alone, they had the CGI show, they had Motu Origins, and they had the Masterverse figures. Yeah. So adults were kind of picking at that other stuff, and the other stuff is aimed towards kids. And same with Hasbro. Like, Hasbro has Marvel Legends, but they also have like the cheaper, more kid-oriented toys, to where Playmates, like, everybody's gonna want the same Playmates figures. So that's like the one area where I could see the overlap really being a problem.
The only way I would be optimistic is Playmates keeps reissuing classic figures. I've been buying a bunch of them and keeping them boxed. I have like Wingnut and Leatherhead and Krang.
They're hard to resist, aren't they, man?
Yeah. When I see them there, I'm just like, you know what? I can't not buy
It's this. Exactly. It's the magic. Just seeing it there in 2023, exactly how it was in 1989. You know what I mean? Like, it just.
So I got a bunch of them. I got all the storage shell turtles.
Totally, I knew it was gonna happen. Man.
I got Mikey like right over there. Yeah, those they keep stocking those well. And it seems like a lot of collectors are buying those. Then not in the same aisle, but just 20 feet down by the collector section, you've got like 5 different series of collector Turtles figures going on now. So
yeah,
I don't know. There is a lot of Turtles figures to buy out there between like Best Action Turtles figures that keep coming out, and this one, pick your 17 NECA toy figure toy lines that are coming out for Turtles, and then usually don't carry Super 7, but the Super 7 reaction figures are usually in like Targets and stuff.
Yep.
So there's a lot of Turtles to collect right now. I can see a lot of older fans being like my initial reaction to the Mutant Mayhem ones and being like, I don't like that Rocksteady design. I'm not buying that toy and stuff. So like maybe some of those toys will be available for the kids because like a lot of adults might just be like, this isn't my Rocksteady, and like so I don't know. Yeah. I'm hopefully optimistic, but you're right. They could just sell out immediately, and it could just end up being like nothing but like the 4 Turtles all for the rest of like the year or something.
Well, the other thing here is they're going to be everywhere. And this is the first time the Turtles line has really just been all everywhere, because it's really weird how it's released, because it seems like Walmart and Target get a lot of the same stuff, but the way Amazon gets it is a lot different. Like they'll get stuff in like the 4-packs. Like they usually just don't get like the single releases, which is really weird.
Yeah.
And I feel like with this line, you probably will be able to get these single pack figures on Amazon. And if they're on Amazon, I imagine, they're going to be doing 100,000 turtle figures. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, just by the fact that we have such a stacked cast of mutants in this movie alone, and then we're getting an animated series out of it and movies for these mutants and stuff. It's like, this is going to be a long toy line if this is successful. Like if this sells well, I could see this going on for a very long time.
Yeah, that's always been the beauty of this, like, what am I saying, property, is that the toy line in the movie thrive together, and then I feel like they fail together as well. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's got to be right up there with the biggest synergy between running toy line and running animated series. Like I feel like they both go strong until they don't. Like the 2012 line went pretty deep. That show went 5 seasons, which is pretty good. The 2003 show, that went for a long time, but I don't feel like the toy line really kept up that long, did it?
Did it go
as long as the series ran?
They had to, because they were fast forward toys.
Yeah, I knew that, but it seems like that action figure line just isn't as deep as even the 2012 line, but it ran for so much longer. I've never really thought about that.
I think the thing is that like they just didn't make as many unique characters for that line. Like there was like only some very key characters like Fugitoid and like Shredder and stuff like that. But aside from that, it was just like the Turtles, like over and over again. So I think that kind of either killed it or just made me not pay as much attention to how long it went on, because it was just the same, characters over and over again. But I'm pretty sure when they did Back to the Sewer, which was like after Rewind, like the last season, the one where they gave them like pupils and they looked stupid. That one, I could be wrong. I don't think that had any action figures that season. I think because the toy line was dead. Let's face it, the show was dead. Like they made another season, but that was just because like they had enough money left over. Like the show was dead at that point. So I think like I think what you're saying is true. Usually when the toy line washes up, the cartoon washes up. Even our toy line, the vintage Playmates is like I said in my Turtle Talk videos, when you get to like wave 5, where you have like King Lionheart, Monty Moose and stuff, kids were kind of getting out of Turtles at that point. Those figures didn't sell as well, and we're getting less characters every wave and stuff. The cartoon coincidentally was like doing worse at that point. And you get to like season 6 and season 7, and it's like most people our age didn't see those as kids. And most people weren't buying the toys anymore then either. So it really is like they live as long as the other one. It's like a symbiotic relationship. So
yeah. But speaking about action figures that do really well on their own, NECA is in the middle of one of their huge Target, Geek Out, whatever events that's going on right now.
Here it comes again.
It's not quite as bad
No.
as the past ones. I feel like this one's going to be a little bit more manageable, especially if you're just worried about the Toon figures, because there's only a couple of them that have been released or dropped during this time.
Yeah, we got the much needed revamped April O'Neil, which I've seen people, all of these people have already been picking up. People have already been finding them. I haven't found them yet, but people are already finding these. We got the revamped April O'Neil. We got Bugman and Electro Zapper, I believe his name is.
Yep.
We've got the roided up Napoleon Bonafrog, and I think that's it. Well, we have some reissues, but I think that's it for new figures.
A pretty big reissue too. So one of the most sought after sets. It hit right when this line really started ramping up, and it was back when the Targets would get like 3, and then that's all they're gonna see, and they weren't ever available online at that point. And that was the only early set that I had to buy online, and I got it so early that the line hadn't really skyrocketed yet. But we have the Casey Jones, and I can't even remember, is it
like the
slash foot soldier? Yeah, I can't remember which one comes with which.
It's the one where the whole midsection is like taken out. It's just like a bar. Yeah.
Yeah. So people are pretty excited about this, because I would say Casey, even though in this series he's not quite the crucial character he is in other ones, he's always a fan favorite.
I think even though he wasn't, I think we all kind of made him a main character in our heads as kids. Like even in that cartoon, like it actually surprised me when I grew up and, got the DVDs and started rewatching the show, like that he was only in like 3 episodes or what. He said more than that, but like in the first, first 5 seasons, he's only in like 3 episodes or something. And that like blew my mind. I was like, I remember this guy being in like every 5 episodes or something. Like, I just thought he was always there. Like the Neutrinos, like he was a very recurring like ally, but he really isn't. And, that's the only iteration of the Turtles where he isn't, but he is such a major character. And I think that's the thing too. The same way we treat Usagi, like he's such a major, vintage character, even though he was in 2 episodes.
Right.
We just we always make Casey a major character in our heads. He was one of the first wave 2 action figures we all got mostly. So he's a big deal. And you were awesome enough to find one in the wild and pick it up, and because I don't have one, so we're gonna work that out where I send you the money and you send it over this way and all, and that's gonna be awesome. I'll finally have Casey Jones, because my only way of getting Casey without buying him online for ridiculous prices was there's a toy store, like a vintage toy store somewhat near me, like a couple towns away. They're just a bunch of crooks. They just slap an extra 100 on everything they have, pretty much. They were selling that for like $200, like the 2-pack. Like, or you could get them alone without the foot soldier for $150. It's like, that's a way worse deal, actually.
Right.
So yeah, I'm gonna be very happy to get them. Thanks for picking them up. So
yeah, no problem. It's a great figure, and yeah, it's awesome that it's one of those things where it almost seemed like it was lost hope at this point. They put out the new April, so it seemed like we were just going to get a new Casey or something like that, but I don't even think this was announced at all. Nobody saw this one coming, and they are dated 2023, so it's not like it's backstock that they've just been hanging on to and they're just trickling out now. They made a whole new run for this, so good on NECA for listening to the fans and getting that set back out there that people really wanted, because again, there's not a lot of sets that are selling for $200. There's that one, and then there was the April one, and those are pretty much it for the original sets. And speaking of that April figure, when we saw the promo images, she definitely looked like her neck was pretty damn long. But as people are starting to get it in hand, everybody's saying it looks much better in hand, and I feel like they just weren't really taking a lot of flattering angles before, because I haven't really seen too many pictures to where I'm like, damn, her neck does look really long in those.
She looks good. She looks damn good. She looks like she jumped out of the cartoon, which is like probably the first time I can say that for a female figure in this line, because like usually they're the weakest ones, but I don't really see any flaws in it. Some people are saying it's like the same body and just a new head, but I think it's a completely new body, because
it definitely is. It's like taller and leaner, I feel like.
She's way more built too. Like she's built. So, and that's how she looked in the cartoon. She was a big woman. So it looks like a totally different body. I think she's just a completely new sculpt. Maybe like her wrists are the same or something, but like for the most part, I think she's a totally new figure, and it looks really good. I actually hope this is. I mean, not that there's really no female characters left, really major ones, but I'd hope this is a sign of how they will do female figures in the future. But I think we got all the major female characters from Turtles actually, so.
Yeah, there's one that we don't have. The one that they'll never give us.
Who's that?
You brought it up before. Vern's girlfriend, what's her name?
Tiffany. Yeah, she looks fine the way she already was, though.
And then I also have a sneaking suspicion that we'll get Zach's cousin Caitlin.
Oh God.
I just have a feeling she gets dropped Sunday when they're running this line bone dry. Like I can see that one coming.
You said Red Sky, it was your falling off point. That's my falling off point. If they make her, I'm done. Like, nah, you're scraping the bottom of the shitter now. So,
and see, what's funny is I have fonder memories for her. I shouldn't say fond. I have stronger memories for her than I do Electro Zapper, who's coming in this Bugman set, and it's really weird because I remember Bugman, but I don't remember Electro Zapper from that episode at all.
Yeah, I don't either, because I know like we've both seen the episode. Like I said, it's not one I'm overly familiar with. I mean, you probably saw it more because you probably had the VHS.
Well, so that's the only one of the four that I didn't have. The Mikey one was the only one I didn't have.
Because to be honest, years ago, like about a decade ago, I got like the 87 series Monopoly. They made like a Monopoly game for it. And they have these little hero cards that are like, it's community chest basically, but it says like an ally is helping you. And one of them mentioned Bugman, and I didn't remember who he was. I'm like, who the fuck is Bugman? And then, like, years later, I was like, rewatching the show again, and I got to the episode Michelangelo meets Bugman, and when I saw him, I'm like, oh, that dude, that weird ass looking like blonde buff surfer dude with a mosquito face. But I didn't like remember him at all by name. But when I saw him, I remembered him from my childhood. But this guy, Electro Zapper, I've seen the episode. I don't remember him. This is not an episode that sticks out to me a lot. I've probably only seen it like 2 or 3 times in my life. And I don't know. He's just like generic supervillain. So I think I probably didn't, because there's so many episodes with generic alien villains or mobsters or something that like he just slid into that category of like, this is just like nameless bad guy of the week, just so that Bugman has someone to fight. And this guy, like, I'll get it because he comes in the 2-pack, but this guy does nothing for me.
No, exactly. And I mean, I'm going to keep the line going because even though I remember Jersey Red very well, it's not like that figure does a lot for me either. And I still have her. So, but the Bugman, the only thing I remember is I always like the beginning of that episode because he talks about like Michelangelo is just really stoked on comics. And like, that's how, because I think Bugman is a comic book, but he ends up being like a real life person or something like that.
It was something like that, which is similar to, I was gonna say, similar to what they did with Wingnut and Screwloose in the 2012 cartoon. But
yeah, and I can't remember what happens to him, but I'm pretty sure it shows him transforming into Bugman, and that's really all I can remember from that episode.
Yeah, because Bugman's like his superhero persona, but he has like a human persona also. So I don't know if he's gonna come with an alt head like the human one. What's he like, Buck something?
Well, because his Buck is all because he's got wings and stuff. I bet he's not coming with it.
No, I think his name was literally Buck. I think.
Oh, Buck, yeah. It was a Brick. I can't remember now.
Brick, something like the Buck Rogers.
Brick Bradley.
Brick Bradley. There you go. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. The Bugman is not a character I'm like overly familiar with, but I remember him enough, and he has a very cool design that I want him. But this Electro Zapper guy, like, you can only store so much stuff in this old freaking like,
which is nice because I mean it really does show how awesome this line is that we're just now getting deep to where people who literally revolve way too much of their life around this stuff are starting to get hit with stuff that they can't even remember.
Yeah. Oh, I just remembered the number 1 female character we haven't gotten that we need, Tempestra.
Oh yeah, Doi. Yeah, and I guarantee she's coming here soon because
she's got to be.
Yeah, I mean, she's the only Knight of the Rogues character they haven't done, and they put out in the accessory set, the little TV screen has the game that Leonardo's playing, Tempestuous Revenge, on it. So yeah,
she's got to be coming. I believe I heard that like one of the sculptors at NECA hates that character, but like you got to do her, man. Like you've done, you can't do Jersey Red and not do Tempestra. You can't do, you know, big nosed goon guy from Bebop and Rocksteady's gang and not do Tempestra. Like, come on, like you got to do her
because she's really one of the last two. Her and the Maestro are kind of the last two that I really, really, really want. And then I'm like, all right, my childhood's pretty much complete now.
I'm getting to the point where I'm pretty complete, honestly. Anyone else we get now is basically just a bonus. Like, I got basically everyone that I think
I'll count any of the weird aliens as a bonus. If we get any of those, I'd be happy. But for the most part, if the 3-armed chubby ones or the 6-armed chubby ones don't get made, I'd like them, but I'll live if they don't.
I forgot Ray and Murdude are my. I still need those guys. I don't think Murdude's gonna happen because no one remembers him. But Ray might. Again, I think they hate him. But like, you got to make him at some point. He's so memorable. But
yeah, especially because he is just so off-brand. Like he might be one of the most off-brand characters. Like he just like talks like an idiot. Like, what's my name? Like he's just such a
he has like a Chicago accent. Like,
right?
Yeah, because you know I always remember like the scientist guy who looks demented as hell. He looks like a Simpsons character or something. The scientist who made him, he turns like April into like a fish woman.
Yep.
And he's like, oh, she's beautiful, isn't she? And then like Ray is like in the corner with his arms crossed against the walls. Like, yeah, she looks real swell, Pops. And like gives him a thumbs up. Like, who the fuck is this dude? Like, it's not at all what I imagined when I took my Ray Filet action figure out of its package. Like, but
yeah, and I'm pretty sure we've talked about this before too, but Murdude shows up pretty late in the series, and I think the episode that he's in, Mikey's goes back and tells the other turtles, and they don't believe him for some reason. Have we talked about this before? Did you bring this up before?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think we talked about that because it's you guys have fought the weirdest fucking things in the world. You've met the weirdest fucking things in the world. You've met the literal Easter Bunny, and you don't believe Mike that he met
can't be more person. So now I feel like we have had the same exact. Somebody's listening is like, you guys have had the same fucking conversation before. All right, so we'll change it up.
When are we getting the Easter Bunny? We need the Easter Bunny. Well, I guess this is our segue. We said they still haven't done Tempestra. Someone has. That was Shredder's Revenge, and Shredder's Revenge is getting an update soon.
Yeah. So really, really, really exciting. They are showing, or they've already showed Usagi as a playable character, which out of everybody, he probably would have been my number one choice. So I'm very excited that's who they had up first.
He's definitely the popular number one. After it came out and we got Casey and everyone was like, oh, they're going to keep adding characters. Everybody I talked to said Usagi. Everyone wanted Usagi. So I think it was very smart to get him immediately. I have my top 3. I can't put Ray Filet in there because he would be Ray from the cartoon because that's what we're doing. We're doing 87 cartoon. So I like him, but I don't want him in the game. He could be a boss because he was a villain, I guess. But my top 3, I guess, would be Mondo Gecko, Muckman, and Joe Eyeball. I think that would be a really interesting character where you could kind of have like strong, slow, far range moves in the front and then like fast, weak moves in the back from like Joe Eyeball on his back. I think that'd be really fun. And then obviously my girl Mona Lisa. So I think those three M's, those would be my top 3 characters. I think Mondo Gecko is like a sure bet. He's gonna get. Everyone loves Mondo Gecko.
I think he would be a strong one. Mona Lisa, I could see going either way because it seems like they might want to put another female character in there because, to my surprise, April is one of the funnest characters to use. You know what I mean? So it'd be cool if they did put like another like quick, fast, fun character like that in there. I wouldn't be mad about that at all. And that's the other thing I'm kind of curious about is like how the stats are going to play out because they pretty much have used like every combination of stat possible. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm assuming he'll probably have like Leonardo's evenly 2-star distribution, if I had to guess.
Maybe he'll be a little faster and a little weaker. I don't know.
Okay, that might be the thing because Casey has a 7-star, so maybe they will give him a plus somewhere then too.
Maybe, yeah.
Speed would make sense then, yeah.
Maybe for the other female character, we'll get 50-foot Irma. No, I don't think the neutrinos are going to be playable because they're tied to the story of this DLC. And another thing that's really cool, so we're getting a new adventure. We're getting like more levels and like more. Yeah. Like that's awesome. I can't wait to see this game just keep continuing.
Yeah.
But also we got all these alt colors and costumes and stuff where you can have like movie colored Splinter and like action figure colored Turtles and all. And like, that is awesome. I mean, that's really cool.
Yeah, so they even had the skull cap Raph. I noticed that one really
I saw
stood
that.
out to me. The cool one though is like Splinter has like the gray robe and stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
I'm really excited that exactly even things like that, just little cosmetic changes that can just make it a little bit more fun and personal for each person that's playing it. Like I'm exactly like they're not just giving like, oh, here's a new character, oh, here's a new levels. They're giving us everything to make the game a little bit better. And I wouldn't mind if they, didn't even worry about a number 2 and just kept going down the DLC route for like the next 10 years. I'd be happy with that.
That's how I feel, honestly. And that's how I think a lot of games kind of should be these days. I mean, it depends. I can see like from a platformer that just like start to finish, I can see just sequels. But a lot of these kinds of games, like group play games, like, like where you get all your friends together and play them, a lot of them, I think like the days of just charging $60 for sequels over and over again are over. I think like you should really just, you don't make a sequel unless you're really just going to completely reinvent the engine and everything. So I think honestly, they should just keep adding to it because I don't know how long this is going to be. The new adventure that we get, it might be like a third of the length of the original one. But if it's the same length, then we're essentially getting Shredder's Revenge 2, like already in this game.
Yeah, and honestly, with all the added things, it would be an even better game than the first one, and it's really just DLC. So in my head, for whatever reason, I'm guessing 4 levels. That's just what's like kind of coming to mind. I could see that happening. Like I don't know, because I think how many levels are in Dimension X when you're in there? It's probably about 4, isn't it?
I think it's more than that. That's a long game.
Yeah.
Maybe 4. I think it's more like 6. I could be wrong on that.
But I feel like it's going to be something like that, where it might open up another like area where you can go on the map and then it teleports you somewhere else. Because what's it called? I can't remember. It's called
something about the dimension, like dimension. Yeah. Should have looked this up before we did.
Right? That would make us good at our job. So
yeah. It's something like dimensional shift or something, or it has some kind of like turtles and dimension shell shock, I think it's called.
Yeah.
I think it's something like that. Yeah, it's like you're opening up a portal to other dimensions, which Donatello did all the time in the cartoon. And you're going to these other dimensions. So yeah, it's cool. I can't wait to see what else we get. I can't wait to see the other characters we get, and I can't wait to. I don't know, when does it come out? I think they said fall. I believe they said September, or
we really should have looked this up because I can't remember either. So.
But yeah, I can't wait. I'm excited because I can't believe this month it's been a year since it came out, Shredder's Revenge, and that game just kicks ass.
Man, I didn't even realize it's been out for a year. That's how like good it is it's never like really been away from my conscience either. Like I picked it up here and there and played it with someone like regularly over the last year. That's very crazy that it's been a year.
Yeah.
Because I guess we just replayed it for the show not too long ago too. So yeah.
That's the way games were when we were kids, though. Like when a game was really good, like Mario 3. I got Mario 3. I wouldn't play it nonstop, but I'd pick it up and replay it like so many times throughout the course of the whole years I had the NES. So it's like when a game's good, man, you can just keep going back to it. So Shredder's Revenge is freaking good.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And like you said, like the way the art style in this, it's not like it needs to keep up to date with the technology of the hardware. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like this is like the art style is timeless. Like this will look just as good in 6 years as it does now.
Yeah. It's like, it's flashier and more technical pixel art than we got on like the 16-bit era, but like, it's still very similar. It's very much like a 90s arcade game, just like a little prettier in all ways. Like it's like a plus version of 90s arcade graphics.
This is April O'Neil, Channel 6 News, and you're watching the Party Wagon Podcast.
All right, you guys. So for the main portion of the show, we are going to be talking about the 2007 TMNT movie titled TMNT. So this is actually the first time that I've ever watched this movie. And I know You've seen it a few times. Yes, I've never watched it before. I could never bring myself to doing it. It's just like, it's one of these things that's so weird. Like I really do have a phobia of just giving the 2003 series a chance. Like The 2012
It's
one,
great. It's great.
I know it is. Everybody says it is, but it's just really hard for me to, I don't know, like it's hard for me to watch other TMNT stuff. Like I've never watched Rise. I watched 2012 just because I think it was on Hulu, and I mean I just threw it on one day, and after that I just let it play forever and got kind of into it. But I mean, even the Michael Bay movies, like I've watched them, but like I don't know. I still felt weird about going to watch it. So like this upcoming movie is the first time I really have been excited for new Turtle stuff, like in the moment in a very long time. But this movie, I'm very indifferent about it. Like I'll let you talk a little bit about it, but like I don't know. I really don't know how I feel. It didn't really wow me, but it wasn't really terrible either. Like I had like the most medium feelings ever about it.
I totally understand what you're saying, because in the 2000s, I had that attitude. Like 2003 cartoon, I watched a bit of it, but I was like, yeah, this is just the edgy, stupid 2000s blocky art style turtle. This isn't real Ninja Turtles. And the 2007 movie, I refused to even watch it when it came out. I'm like, this isn't Turtles. This is shit. They look like garbage. And like, I was really hard on it. And then when I saw it years later, I still didn't like it. But then I've seen it about like 3 times now, I think. Every time I see it, I like it more and more. I really enjoyed it this morning when I watched it again, actually, because I wasn't going to rewatch it for this podcast originally, because I just watched it last year. And last year I liked it quite a bit. I was like, oh, this is a lot better than I gave it credit for in the past. And I honestly don't think they look like shit. Mikey looks like shit, but I don't think anyone else really looks like shit. I have no problem with the art style. It takes a second to warm up to, but I think it's fine and it looks great in the action. But yeah, I like this one more and more every time I see it. There's still a lot of problems I have with it, but I think it's damn good. And I have a shit ton of notes here, so I will point out the problems. But
all right, so let's talk about like the style of the movie before we like really get into the plot and stuff like that. So the art, I feel like, or the animation, whatever you want to call it, I feel like it was kind of all over the place. I feel like there was times where I'm like, wow, this looks pretty damn good for 2007. And then there's other times where I'm like, this looks very 2007 to me.
I think when the movie first starts off and there's like that fat dude like eating the apple, the criminal dude, he looks like shit. And like that's always like a bit of a like eye opener when I first turn the movie. It's a little hard to get into the movie, like, ooh, this looks rough. Like this looks really rough. And by the way, just side note, Leonardo totally murders that dude. He straight up just kills him.
Oh yeah,
that fat dude is dead.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it takes me a while to get into it because I'm like, oh, this art is kind of rough. But then the more I watch it, as long as I don't have to see Michelangelo's face, it doesn't really bother me that much. Even at first, like Leo's face bothers me a little bit until like once I'm like 5 minutes in, I don't care and I'm just in the movie. But yeah, then there's some scenes like when Raph and Leo are fighting in the rain and the water's pouring out of it. It looks freaking amazing for 2007.
That's exactly what I was thinking of when I was watching. Yeah, so when Raph's the Night Watcher, there's a scene where he's on the ledge when it's raining, and it looks beautiful. Like it looks almost like realistic in a way, the way the water is bouncing off him and the shine he has on like his armor and stuff like that. But then there's another scene that's a little bit later in the movie where they're all standing around. I can't remember if they're in the sewer layer. It's when everybody, or they might be in April's apartment. Like the characters just look so detached from the background and the things around them. You know what I mean? Like I feel like there was a lot more put into the characters than there was the background and the props around them a lot of times.
I think it depends on the scene, because I feel like
it definitely does.
Anytime they're on the rooftops, this movie
looks great. Yes.
Fucking amazing. I think like the way they did the lighting, the way the brown, the brick, everything about it, the kind of like rusty coloration, it really just it like screams TMNT. It looks a lot like, it just instantly basically makes me think of the Mirage comics, like the early Mirage comics when they're on the rooftops. Like it just looks like that. Like it looks like, oh, these are the same rooftops that we were introduced to the Turtles on and everything. So it's like, they nailed the TMNT vibe on the rooftops, I think. But you're right. When they're in like a well-lit like environment, like when they're at Winter, when the Casey and April are at like Winter's building during the day in the beginning of the movie, like bringing the statue in, you can really notice how rough some of the movement and the backgrounds and stuff are, I think, there. Because the more well lit it is, the less they can hide the cheapness, I guess, of the animation. But
yeah, and you're right. Like all of the best scenes in this movie, outside of the ending of the movie, are on the rooftops. Like that's where all the best animation is. That's just where all the best, I mean, plot line even is to me. Like that's just all the most exciting stuff right there. And like I said, I do just feel like they maybe put a little bit more into some scenes than others. But again, this was 2007. You know what I mean? This is still very early in the going full CGI days.
I was surprised it was made by Warner Brothers. I didn't remember that until the Warner Brothers logo came up at the beginning. And I was like, oh, wow, Warner Brothers making a Ninja Turtles movie. But I think that was before the Viacom acquisition, I'm pretty sure. So
I don't know what the situation is, but that there's a new 5-pack that just came out that's at Walmart, and it's made by Warner Brothers. So I think Warner Brothers owns the rights to, I think, their first 5 movies or something like that.
Oh, you know, that makes
sense. The first 4 movies and the Batman movies, I think Warner Bros. Has the rights to those 5 movies now. I think they bought out New Line.
Warner Brothers owns Batman, but yeah, that I was just gonna say they own all the Freddy Krueger movies. Those were all New Line.
Yep, they bought out New Line. That's what happened then.
Okay, so yeah, that makes sense. So you want to just jump into the movie and just I guess we can just go down through.
Yeah, I mean we definitely can. Yeah. So and again, I'm not gonna just completely shit on this movie the whole time, but right off the bat, I feel like the movie has a very, very slow start. Like I feel like it took kind of a long time for it to really get going.
My first note is literally just in huge letters: too much intro exposition.
Yeah,
because we get Lawrence Fishburne telling us the origin of the Ninja Turtles. Then he quickly tells us that they defeated this guy named Shredder, which also there's a big problem in this movie. They do expect you to know about the Ninja Turtles. Like if you went into this a turtle virgin, like you didn't know anything about Ninja Turtles, you'd have no fucking clue what was going on for most of it.
So I think it is unofficially a 4th movie, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know, like it
definitely was. The actions that happened in the 2nd movie to where Shredder is dead seems to be what's happening now.
It is. And they show the scepter from the 3rd movie. They show
exactly.
Shredder's helmet from the 1st movie. Like it is explicitly stated within the movie to be connected to those, but marketing wise, they didn't advertise it as that at all. It's really weird. I think like maybe everyone involved in the movie weren't on the same page, but it is definitely supposed to be in that world, even though I guess they don't act that different, actually. I guess they're kind of on key with their personalities. Casey Jones is way more of a man baby than he was in the original, but yeah, so we get the exposition about the Turtles and Shredder. Then it goes into, and 3,000 years ago, there was these Aztec warriors, and they were led by this guy, what was it, like Yowzel or something like that?
I'm never going to remember the names of any of the new characters, so yeah, don't even worry about that.
Yowdle, I think it was Yowdle or something. And it's like Winters, his name is Winters, but yeah, he like opens a giant wormhole to another dimension, and he makes him immortal, and it turns his generals into stone, and then it unleashes 13 cryptids, and they murder all the armies, and then they will exist in mankind for the rest of the time. So I guess the cryptids are immortal. And it's just like it's so much exposition. It's just like, damn, dude, like you're lucky I know who the Turtles are. All I have to take in is this crazy cosmic Aztec story. Because if I didn't know who the Turtles were, that's like 2 weird ass stories like back to back that I have to learn. And then later in the movie, April repeats that exact same exposition about the Mayans or Aztecs, whatever the hell, and like the stone generals and all that stuff. She repeats all of that again at her apartment. And it's like, dude, we heard it. That was like the first 10 minutes of the damn movie. Like, can we get on with it? So I think definitely there's definitely some exposition problems. And I think that kind of leads me to it's growing on me, but it's a weird story to be a turtle story. What did you think of it?
So that's like what kind of put me off to this movie in general, is I knew it has like its own bad guys, its own story that's not really anything to do with any other iteration of the Turtles that's happened since then or before then or any other time. So that kind of put me off at first. And even when I started watching it, I'm like there's so many villains that you could put in here. Like their freaking stable is huge, and it was just, weird that they decided to go with this alt story. Yeah, like it didn't disappoint me as much as I thought it was going to. For having brand new original antagonists, it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be.
I think the first time I watched it, I was really mad that they weren't like recurring Turtles villains. I was like, you made them generals made out of rock and you didn't make them the rock soldiers. I was like
Right.
so pissed off about that. I was like, they even had to come in contact with another dimension, like it's Dimension X and all this stuff. And but I think the more I watch it, I appreciate it as like this feels like the kind of weird ass story that would happen in classic Mirage comics.
Yes, exactly. And that's why I think watching this so much later, I was more accepting of it than I probably would have been if I saw it in 2007 or honestly anytime probably up until I did start reading the books and kind of got into my Turtles Renaissance, because that's the one thing I learned about that series is like it's just all over the place. Like it's like a sci-fi adventure at this point. It's like a fantasy adventure at another point. Like it's just all over the place. And that's really what the Turtles are. And once I really did just start to accept another form of Turtles, I think it did make me easier to wrap my head around this one. But honestly, like, I don't know. I feel like the rock guys were kind of badass. Like when they were beating on all the cryptids and stuff like that, it was pretty cool, especially the really jacked one. Like when he grabs that dumpster and just crushes that bat creature. I'm like, okay, this guy's for real.
Yeah. Yeah, they're cool villains. They're intimidating. When the Jaguar one starts like chasing after Raph and Casey, he's like banging through
I
the
felt
door.
a little bit of tension there, and I mean that's something that, again, I was a little bit surprised with because I didn't think I was going to get much out of this movie. I'm like, okay, like I'm feeling this a little bit.
So we keep mentioning them. They don't call them cryptids in the movie, but you know, one of them, the first one they fight is officially called Bigfoot, and like the little red one that Raph fights in the diner is called the Jersey Devil. So it's like I just call them cryptids because I figured that's what it's supposed to be. They're like, oh, this is how these weird monsters got into our world, and they terrorized mankind from that point on. It's like, oh, so like this is like, you know, I don't know, the Bunyip or the Loch Ness Monster or something crap, or Skinwalkers or something. But the thing is, when you look, because I had like Google, because I knew it was like Bigfoot and Jersey Devil, but then when I Googled it, I'm like, oh, the rest of them are just called like Slashatron and stupid stuff like that. So it's like, okay, so only two of them are cryptids. It seems like they had an idea and they didn't go with it. And it's just weird. Like, why are there exactly 13 of them? Why do they come out of the portal? Why do they have to be sacrificed to or put back in the portal to end the curse? It's really weird. And I just feel it's weird that you introduce, there are 13 monsters you have to catch, and we only get to see like 4 of them.
Yeah.
And like, you don't introduce a number like that and not let us see it. Like, it just seemed kind of weird that there's like 3 scenes that actually involve them. 3 of them are like captured in a montage. When I looked at that Google wise, 3 of them don't even have names and don't even appear. One of them is just a leg you see at one point. And it's like, that's kind of shit. Like, you could have, they seem weird. They seem like untapped potential. Like they had an idea, but they didn't develop it. They just threw it in immediately as a MacGuffin kind of thing and didn't really iron it out.
I'd imagine a lot got left on the cutting room floor because it's only a 90-minute movie, which, again, really nice to just watch a 90-minute movie. You know what I mean? It doesn't take up your whole evening or afternoon. But I don't know. This is probably my biggest gripe with the movie is that I feel like they spent way too much time sitting around and talking, way too much time focusing on the B plot of the Leonardo versus Raphael and not enough on the main story. Like, you're exactly right. Like, they barely showed any of these, we'll just keep calling them cryptids, any of these cryptids. Like, they barely shows any of them. Like, it barely shows the foot soldiers doing stuff, which are honestly the coolest parts of the movies, dude. Karai is fucking sweet in this movie. And so are the foot soldiers. Like, I don't know, man. I like my Karai like Stone Cold. Like, she is probably one of my favorite female characters ever. Like, is there a bad version of Karai? Like, can you think of a bad iteration of Karai?
No. For me, I like her. I think this movie is one of my favorite Karais. Bad iteration of Karai was Out of the Shadows when Vernon knocks her out. That's a bad version of Karai.
Yeah, dude, yeah, I guess. Yeah, I totally forgot about that one. Yeah, she does. God, freaking Bay.
I found that I always have found Karai I don't want to say boring. I like the character, but I just feel like she always failed in comparison to all the other super interesting Turtles villains. It's like And then you have a cool Asian girl with a sword. It's like, oh, that's cool, but like we have an alligator man. Like, I don't know, like, so like I always didn't find her as interesting, but yeah, she is definitely cool. And you're right, I can't really think of a bad version. Oh, the Last Ronin NECA figure. There's a bad version.
Yeah, that's God, so disappointing. Again, hopefully that's one where pictures aren't doing it justice.
Hopefully. The thing is, though, I don't mind too much that we don't get too many of the fantasy action scenes and stuff, because I think one of the biggest appeals to this version of the Turtles is that we're seeing the Turtles grow up. I think that's, unfortunately, this movie didn't click, but I think it was actually, if it had clicked and a lot of people our age watched it, it would have been kind of cool because it feels like you aged up with like your childhood superheroes. Like they're all getting jobs now for the first time and like just working boring adult lives. And we just started doing that at that time. Like it was 2007. Like we were just at a high school, we were getting our first like, long, like full-time jobs and stuff. And I just think it kind of did. You have the whole story of Casey. Like he's an adult now, he's in a relationship, but like he has to act more like an adult. He's like still too much like a kid. It's like, it appeals to like people in their early 20s, this movie, I kind of think. And even the way they have like retro arcades in their lair and everything, right? It's like they're still kind of like attached to their childhood, but they have to move on. They're growing up. I do really like the stuff with Raph and Leo in this movie. I think it steals a bit too much attention. Like Don almost doesn't exist in this movie, but I do like the stuff with Raph and Leo. I do think like they might do the best job with their rivalry I think I've ever seen in a version of the Turtles in this movie. And I'll get to it more when we talk about their fight scene later on. But I don't know. Again, the first time I watched this movie, I was hard on it. I was like, it sucked. It didn't have anything Turtles. But like, I go back and watch it, like they did a lot with the characters. Like they didn't do that. Again, Mike and Don don't really do much, especially Don. But like the characters who do get attention, they get a lot of development, and it's believable development too.
Yeah. So like you said, it's all really focused on Leo and Raph though, because it's funny that you think Don got the least amount of shine, but I only remember Mikey having like 5 lines throughout the whole movie. And I remember him skateboarding in the sewers and on the half pipe, and that stuff's really cool. But like, I feel like they did nothing with Mikey at all. At least Don was doing smart guy stuff here and there, but like, it's just very weird how imbalanced it felt as far as the Turtles. And like, and again, that's just kind of something that bothered me about the first part of the movie too, is like they're all kind of broken up and not really together. And that's like what makes the Turtles is their dynamic. And yeah, Raph always goes out and does his own thing. He does that shit. But the other 3 are always pretty tight together. And like, it really feels like the band's kind of broken up here.
Yeah, which is it's actually funny as a side note that you think Mikey got the least amount, because if you look, I put the DVD cover down there in the graphics this week, and he is all you see on the cover of the DVD is like Mikey. I think Mikey, he had a bunch of jokes. Like when they're in action scenes, he's cracking jokes a lot and stuff. And like I just feel like he's the one standing there listening to Splinter talk to Raph at the end, and when Raph hands in his Night Watcher helmet, which actually I thought looked like Tom from Toonami. You remember that little guy?
Right?
Like Mike comes up with his joke with like the helmet and everything, his mask and everything. It's like I just feel like Mike was there for like a punchline every now and then. Whereas like Don was there in like 3 scenes in the movie. I feel like I don't know. But yeah, I do kind of like that they're broken up, because again, it kind of, I guess it's depressing, but it's kind of realistic that like, when you get older and you have to get jobs and like everyone does kind of go their own way, and like their glory days are kind of behind them, and obviously they come back, they get back together. Like it's almost like a getting the band back together movie. Yeah. But like I think the weirdest part is just like they tell us that like Leo was sent to Central America for training to become a better leader. I don't know what the hell that training instruction was. Like, just go to the jungles of Central America. You'll become a better leader. He's not leading anyone, though. He's just like, you become a better leader by leading your troops. Right. And then like April just happened to be in Central America also. And
yeah, it seemed a little coincidental there.
Like of all the places in the world you could be, really. Well, I actually have a note here that just straight up says April looks like a Bratz doll, and I think that's true. And I also want to say it's weird when Leo he meets April and she like convinces him like, you should go back, and then he like teleports away. Basically, he doesn't teleport, but he basically teleports away. He just fucking leaves her in like a ditch, like 50 feet in the ground in the Amazon. Like, how the hell did she get out of there? Like, you just left her for dead. So that was kind of weird. But yeah, I kind of like that the story is like that they are a little broken up. It's a little more realistic. Like Raph, he does have this like self-righteous kind of attitude that like he knows he's still going out there and fighting crime. He knows he's doing it without the help of his team, that like he's thinking like, I can do this on my own. And Leo and Raph are both like so flawed that I think they're both, you can see it from both angles. I think this movie is definitely Raph's movie. It's through Raph's point of view, which most of the movies are. But they do a really good job of, you can see how they're both flawed and they both have to realize that they're flawed. Like Leo's such an arrogant schmuck at points in the movie, and Raph is like just so jealous and so bitter and stuff. And I think like it feels believable when they get over like what their flaws, when they realize what they're doing in this movie. I think it's very believable. Like, and again, like they feel older. They don't feel like teenagers, because I think that's even why they just called it TMNT. If you'll notice in the movie, they never call them teenagers once.
Yep.
Even at the end, when they're saying, we are this, we are that, when they show them hopping around the city, they don't say we are the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It says we are ninjas or something. Because I think they're supposed to be like in their 20s in this movie. Because it's clearly like the 1990 ones, but now like, the 2000s. So yeah, I don't know. I like that, honestly. I like that they're a little broken up, that they're not just like the Turtles 3 turtles right at the beginning of the movie. But
yeah, so I think you nailed it with that right there. Like Raph, and again, because Raph got so much character development, I really feel like he is exactly the kind of person I was in my early mid-20s, like just strong-headed. I thought I was the best at everything. I couldn't understand why anybody else would have something better than me when I should have that. Like, just very, like, he did play that role very well, to where his own pride just really like was in his own way. You know what I mean? Like, they did do a very, very, very good job with that. And you're right. I definitely do feel like they feel like they're in their 20s with their jobs. And Raph, he's not really an angsty teenager. He seems like a pissed off, chip on his shoulder person in their mid-20s with too much fucking testosterone running through their body that they don't know how to control. Like, that's exactly how he felt. And yes, I've related to that before in my life. Side note on that one, though. Why is Raph always have a New York accent, but none of the other turtles do, but they all live in New York? It's that way in every damn movie.
It is. I guess the weirder thing is, how come in some iterations of the Turtles, Michelangelo has a Californian accent?
Right? Even weirder.
Raph has the attitude. And when you think of New York, you think of, hey, I'm walking here.
Yeah, exactly. He's definitely like a New York cliche for sure. Even though I don't love how much time they spent on Raph and Leo, he definitely does get a good character portrayal in this one for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think all the character writing went into those two guys. So yeah, when we start meeting the turtles, they kind of have like a splash screen for each turtle, and we meet each one. I find it really weird that back to back in Donnie's scene and in Raph's scene, we get a playing hard to get joke in both of them. So like Don's doing tech support, and he's talking to a woman that he thinks is a man, but he's talking to it. He's like, did you try turning it on and off again and stuff? And at some point he has to tell her, she's like, no, I'm not playing hard to get. Like, he thinks like they're asking him like weird questions and stuff. But then the next scene, Raph is chasing a criminal. He's like, oh, playing hard. I love it when they play hard to get and stuff. It's like, you just said that line. And then when you read Weinstein Company at the beginning, it's like, yeah, it's a little weird now. But yeah, so another thing I found weird is like, so Mr. Winters, he's the immortal guy from 3,000 years ago. He's played up like he's going to be the main villain. Like, we're supposed to think he's sinister. And then it's supposed to surprise us at the end of the movie that like he's good and he's trying to put an end to the curse. But in the intro exposition, they tell us that he had to live in his sorrow and misery forever, and that he was sympathetic and stuff. So it's like they kind of spoil it, I think, right at the beginning of the movie. Like I don't think anyone's really expecting him to be evil when they're watching it, because they kind of already told us that he's miserable. So I don't know. I found that a little weird.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, because I didn't really see his I didn't really know what that was gonna happen until all the stone dudes turned heel. Then it's like, okay, they're definitely, this is where this movie's going now. So that one, I'm not gonna say it surprised me, but it definitely didn't slap me in the face that he was gonna have this like, oh, I was trying to really save everybody and I hate being immortal.
I have another note in here that just says Splinter watches the Gilmore Girls. I didn't catch that, I think, because I know he says, like, I watch my stories and stuff. And he's like, Dave and Brenda are definitely going to break up, or whatever the hell he says. I don't remember the names. But I caught it this time. They said, like, Gilmore Girls would be interrupted for this news bulletin. I'm like, I hated that show. I didn't watch it, but I remember my mother and my sister, when I was in high school, that was like their bonding thing, is they would watch that together every Tuesday night. I hated that show. And I'm like, Splinter watches that? No.
So it's really funny because Lacey just started watching that show too. And yeah, dude, it's just the weirdest show in the world, man. They do not talk how any humans in the world talk ever. Like,
they're
no
so
humans talk
sarcastic.
and so fast and quippy and whippy all the time. Like,
they're so sarcastic. They kind of did that in like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which I did like, but like the show was kick ass enough where you didn't notice it. But like Gilmore Girls is like, it gives you a headache, that show. Like, they're so quippy and they're so fast. It's like no one's that clever. No one can just think of quips that fast. But apparently Splinter keeps up with it, so he likes it.
So I'm glad you brought up the news, because that's one of the things that I did have in my notes too, and I didn't even pull them up because I wrote down so very few notes. But
Really
when we're talking about like the realistic tone of this movie, the first time I can't remember if it's Splinter or Casey's watching the news, but it talks about, it's 2007, and it talks about how the housing crisis is getting worse. And right before this is right before that recession hit in 2008. So it's really funny that they're putting like real world drag into this movie. And if you weren't there, you wouldn't realize that that's really what was happening in the news at the time.
Yeah, it's weird because you're right. That is like something that was happening then, that like if young people today watch it, they're not going to know. They're going to think it's the current housing issue. Like if people watch it now, they're not going to know that was like a relevant news topic at the time. But I was going to say about the newscaster, he's voiced by Billy West, who I don't know if you know who that is. He did like Stimpy and Doug from Doug and everything. He does Fry from Futurama and stuff. And he does the newscaster. I loved hearing that. Like Jim Cummings is like a police chief at some point, and Kevin Michael Richardson is like the main general who first turns heel. And it's just cool to hear voice actors in movies, because like, you know, these days there's a lot of them. You know, Sarah Michelle Gellar, speaking of Buffy, is April. And
so before we get too far from that one,
Chris Evans.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, because I want to talk about some of the voice actors too. Sarah Michelle Gellar, I cannot not hear her as Sarah Michelle Gellar. I don't know why, no matter what she was in, because she just played Tila in that Masters of the Universe series. And there was another thing I just watched that she did a voice in too, and she just sounds so Sarah Michelle Gellar in everything she's in.
She does, yeah. She's Buffy. She'll always be Buffy to me, but I guess for some people she's Daphne, but from the Scooby-Doo movies. Yeah, but I do like that, you know, obviously they have their big name actors in there, like Sarah Michelle Gellar, who really isn't a big name anymore. She really just does voice acting. But at the time she was big. And you know, Chris Evans, actually, he wasn't big yet at the time.
Yeah, that's the one that really blew my mind when I looked at the casting for this. Like, I could not, this had to have been one of the first things he did. Like, because I guess, okay, hang on.
He was Human Torch already.
Yep, he was Human Torch, and then Not Another Teen movie had coming out before this.
Shit, I forgot about that.
I think that's the movie that put him, like, kind of kicked off his career, yeah.
I forgot he was in that, yeah.
Yeah, he's got the jet black hair, so you always forget that it's him.
Yeah. He was in Scott Pilgrim also.
You know what? I've never actually seen Scott Pilgrim before.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm not going to comment because people love that movie. And
Okay. Yeah. Don't get more people to hate us. People are probably going to be mad at how much I've already hated on TMNT.
I don't know how many people like this one. I don't know.
I feel like it's an age thing because Bryershin, one of my subscribers, like he was really stoked on this movie and he really likes the 2012 series too. And he definitely says he's like it's definitely an of my age type situation, so I can understand that you don't get it how I get it. So yeah, I feel like it definitely didn't miss with the people that are probably a decade younger than us. But back to the voice actors, the biggest one, Winters, is Patrick Stewart, which is like a huge get for this movie, I feel like.
Yeah, that's the biggest name they have for sure. I almost wonder. Well, actually, Mako is not as big as Patrick Stewart, but Mako does Splinter, and he was in like Conan the Barbarian. He was like the narrator. He Samurai Jack. He's Aku. So like he's done a lot of stuff. Yeah, Patrick Stewart. I almost feel like they got Patrick Stewart and then they wrote a villain around him.
Yeah.
But I do like hearing that there's actual voice actors in it too, because you get your Billy West and your Jim Cummings, and it's like in modern movies you don't get that anymore. Even in like the 90s, even when Disney was putting Robin Williams and Nathan Lane and stuff in their movies, like they still in Pocahontas they still had Jim Cummings doing like half the Native Americans and stuff. So it's like today it's just like you get an animated movie and it's just a giant freaking list of A-list celebrities, and it's just like they can do good jobs. Jack Black did a great job as Bowser, but like they're never going to do as good a job as a designated voice actor can. And
well, I mean, just think about back in the day, like how many gigs those guys worked. Like Rob Paulson was in every cartoon ever, man, dude. He if you watch old cartoons, there's so many times where I'm like, that's Rob Paulson, that's Rob Paulson, that's Rob Paulson. Like it's crazy how much stuff he was in. And you're right, same thing with Billy West. Like he did literally 50% of the voices on Nickelodeon, probably.
He did, yeah. Nickelodeon, yeah, he did even anything they're in, they do multiple voices.
Yeah.
And Trace McNeil, she did like every female character in the freaking 90s and stuff. Like there was just certain Cree Summer, certain voice actors, they were just in everything back then. I don't know if there's voice actors to that level anymore. I think Tara Strong still does well, but I don't know how many of the classics still get like, I don't know if there is like a new team of voice actors like there was in the 90s. The 90s, there was like a voice acting scene. I don't know if there really is anymore because they're giving all the jobs to Seth Rogen and Jerry Seinfeld or whoever the fuck will take it. So
I mean, it makes sense too, because I mean, there's just not nearly as many movies and live action stuff being made that it was. And all these stuff or all these shows that hit like Netflix and stuff, a lot of it's no-name actors, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When these series blow up, it's usually a bunch of no-names, and then that's how they make their name. So it is just a whole different ball game now. And you're right. I said that this was pretty early in CG, but I mean, like Pixar and DreamWorks had been doing stuff way before this, and clearly they were the pinnacle, but they've always kind of thrived on that concept too, to where they've always had huge stars for their movies. Typically, like they'll have their voice actors in there, but for the most part, like a DreamWorks or a Pixar movie is almost all celebrities. And I feel like now that so many things are animated, that's probably wise because that's the way they did it. So I feel like all the other studios feel like, well, if DreamWorks and Pixar are getting all these celebs, that's what we have to do now.
Yeah, definitely. I think like Disney started it in the Renaissance because like you look at like so Aladdin, they did the genie. That was a huge success. I think that kind of changed things because then like the Lion King, they're almost all big names like James Earl Jones and like Mr. Bean is Zazu and everything, Rowan Atkinson and stuff. And it's like they're all Jeremy Irons. They're all just these big names. Jonathan Taylor Thomas. And but even then, like I said, Pocahontas afterwards had Jim Cummings and stuff. But now it seemed like it was kind of like turning people onto the idea of like, oh, that made a lot of money when they did that. Like, because at that time, Lion King was the highest grossing animated film of all time. So I think like then Pixar, they're like, okay, we're going to go crazy. We're going to get Tom Hanks and we're going to get Tim Allen. Yeah, Tim Allen. We're going to get all these big name celebrities and stuff. And then I think Shrek just took it to like the whole other level of just like every single voice is a humongous actor. Jonathan Lithgow and all these just giant names. And they every sequel just got more and more Antonio Banderas and stuff. And that's just when you got like that ending screen that just lists like boom, 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 like all the celebrities. And it's like, because I think they realize like, okay, adults will come for the celebrities, and now they just do it, not even remembering why they do it. So,
Right.
I will say though, Kamek in the Mario movie was voiced by Kevin Michael Richardson, an actual voice actor who does the general in this. I thought he was one of the best voices in the whole movie. I thought he was great. He did like an Igor kind of voice, like a Peter, not Igor actually, a Peter Lorre kind of voice.
Yeah.
And I really liked it. He did a good job. But anyway, back to this movie. I will say, when it comes to the humor in this movie, I don't think anything actually made me laugh. There's a lot of humor. There's more than I always think there is. And it is kind of true to the 87 cartoon. Like Mike and Raph will make a lot of stupid quips and stuff and jokes like while they're fighting. And even though I'm like, yeah, that's a bad one. As I think about it, I'm like, that's the kind of shit they would have said back in the 87 cartoon. Right. But yeah, did you think the humor was good, or did it feel like?
So I didn't think it was terrible. There was only one laugh out loud moment for me, and it's not like I just had freaking from the gut laugh. But when they're in the high speed chase where Casey, April, Karai, and the foot soldier are in that van. Okay, so there's a couple things in that scene that actually did make me laugh. So, and Karai's like, you think they'd be more worried about this thing chasing us right now because they're just arguing. That made me laugh because, again, just thinking about Karai just being this like stone cold assassin, just driving around with this couple arguing. Like, I don't know. Like I said, I really like Karai. I like how dry and no nonsense she is. And then when they got back to there and they crashed the van and Karai pushes April out, but then the foot soldier pushes Karai out. I don't know why, but I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty funny. The setup is definitely
that's really the only scene I remember. I'm like, okay, that was a pretty funny run.
I think the scene they banked on to be funny that to me just feels so forced is the Jersey Devil scene in the diner with Raph, where it plays like, whoa, Black Betty, bam, a lamb. And it's
and it wasn't even the original version of Black Betty. Like, this movie has a really weird score. Like it's almost like it could be good, but it's just not. You know what I mean?
It's pretty 2000s. It's pretty like, I'll get to that in a bit, like how 2000s this movie is. Yeah, I don't know. That scene, I remember like it was all in the marketing. The trailers all showed the Jersey Devil scene. The official website, I remember because I was looking at like old toy stuff, but when I go on the Turtle site, they'd have posts about this, this new movie. Because this is around the time I was getting back into the toys. They had like little like animated GIFs of him like dancing on they really wanted this Jersey Devil thing to become like the Pikachu of this movie, like the minions of this movie. And I don't think anyone gave a shit about it, but it feels so forced. But it's I mean, maybe if I saw it as a kid, I would have laughed my ass off. I'm looking at it as a cynical adult, but to me, that just feels like they were really banking on that scene. But like, it comes out of nowhere. The audience isn't familiar with what this thing is, and like it's not really that cute. It's kind of ugly. So it's like, I don't know. I just don't think it really like landed the way they thought it was going to land.
No, but that scene did set up probably one of the best scenes in the movie. Yes. So I know you're chomping at the bit to talk about this. So yeah, so let's talk about like the rooftop action scenes. And this is definitely one of the best ones, is the fight between Raph and Leo.
Yes, I think most people who like this movie agree this is the highlight of the whole film. I don't know if I can say it's the best animation in the film, because the final battle has some really cool animation. And I just really like the first shot of them in like silhouette with the white eyes on the rooftops at the beginning. That's really cool. It has amazing animation. Like I said earlier, the rain looks really good, but it's such a good scene in like looking into like who Raph and Leo are and like why they hate each other and how much they hate each other. But then ultimately how much they actually love each other. And because Leo doesn't know it's Raph when he starts off. He's just like, who's this Nightwalker, a clown? Like he's stealing our gig, which I still don't really get the idea that he's so against the idea of a vigilante when it's like, that's what you
so hypocritical. And I think that's the point it's trying to make, is that Leo is this self-righteous dick. And it's like, dude, you're doing the same thing they are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, the same thing he is.
Exactly. And so he just thinks like, oh, who is this guy? He's so arrogant. When he's fighting with the chains, he's just shit talking him so much. He eventually knocks Raph's helmet off, his, Toonami Tom head helmet. And he sees it's Raph. And it seems like Leo wants to stop there. He's like, Raph, don't do this, Raph. But Raph's like, he's freaking pissed at that point, because he's like Leo just destroyed his whole persona here, this whole thing. So you feel the rage in Raph in this scene. Raph is fucking pissed in this
Yeah.
scene. He uses his side correctly for the first time. He breaks Katana.
Breaks the swords, yep.
But then Raph wins the fight. Raph gets like what would be the finishing blow on Leo. So Raph actually beats Leo in this fight. And when Raph sees that he's like, you know, inches away from potentially murdering his own brother, that's when like he kind of breaks down and like gets a step back and is like, whoa, what the hell am I doing? Kind of thing. And then obviously then Leo gets kidnapped afterwards and stuff, and he hears him scream. And like Raph having to go back to Splinter, it reminds you of when you do something really bad as a kid and you're like terrified of your parents. When you hear the car pull up, you're like, oh, should I have to tell them now? Oh, should I have to tell them now? And like when he comes in, he's like, Master Splinter, I did something real bad. And he just brings out the two katanas. It's like, oh shit. Like you feel that, like, oh man, that's hard to tell your dad that like, I beat the shit out of my brother and now he got captured by the bad guys because of me. But yeah, the scene does so much because I think like so many movies, you know, they have the characters have a falling out and then 5 minutes later, they're just like, so you want to be friends again and stuff. Like every modern Disney movie does that. Moana did that and Zootopia did that and all, where it's like you have a falling out just because the plot says it has to happen now. Where I think this movie, that's the main plot. They build to it the whole film. And Raph is getting angrier and angrier, and Leo is getting more and more arrogant. And in this moment, they both kind of erupt. And I guess it's kind of the equivalent of like having an argument with a loved one, but in here they're actually beating the shit out of each other. It takes that for them to realize that like they're both just acting out of their insecurities, and they're both just being like petty and jealous and everything. And I think Raph like then does realize that. Obviously, yeah, he realizes that Leo should be the leader, but like they tried to do that in like the Michael Bay movies, and it just didn't come off like it genuine like it does here. I think here there's so much heart into it. I think it's like there's so much emotion into it that I feel it was so much more than I do in other versions of the Turtles.
It comes back to I can really understand where Raph is, what he's going through here, because I also have had to fuck up so bad in my life that's what it took for me to realize the shit that I was doing is stupid. You know what I mean? So I really do get that in that same situation to where you realize you just fucked up so bad and you would give anything to go back 30 seconds and change what you just did, and you can't. And now you're sitting there with that guilt of I have to now live with what the fuck I just did. Like, and exactly, like it does such a good job of him going from this like maniac, adrenaline driven, out of control freaking vigilante to like literally ready to cry in front of his dad, essentially. You know what I mean? So it's just that it's that emotional roller coaster you do when you're just, your brain isn't fully developed yet, but your emotions and hormones are. Like I definitely, you are correct. That is by far like the biggest heartfelt moment in the movie for sure.
Yeah, it's like it's weird because it's the most heartfelt moment, but it's also probably the most badass moment. Also, it's like you get your badass macho scene, but then you get your emotional scene also. It's like I don't know. I think it's great. It's definitely the highlight of the movie. And I have heard some people mock the fact that people say like, oh, the Leo and Raph fight's the best. Or like, yeah, it's not that great actually. But like, no, I think it is great actually. I think it is a really good scene. So
yeah. And it's animated really well because, again, it is the darkness in the rain, I feel like, that just gives it that extra edge. And the fact that the rain is animated so well, it doesn't look... I feel like water is one of the hardest things to animate correctly. And even for 2007, it looks pretty damn good.
It looks really good. Like just the way it like makes everything glossy, the way it hits. Like that's such a hard texture to get right, and they got it right. And then you have like the big red like cola lights like there. Like I think it says like red eye cola or something. But you kind of have like a little bit of red flashing on everything. So it just looks really cool. But I think it's done tastefully. I think a lot of movies now, when they use like color correction, even then they were doing it a lot. Where like, you know, like Triple X and all those action movies, they were like all desaturated green or like all desaturated blue. This is like a good balance of color, but there's just a little hint of red just to make it like a little more like fury, like a little more fury to the scene. And it's an amazing scene. I think it's great. I think it's this is, like I said, this is not one of my top favorite Turtles movies ever, but I will say that this is one of the best moments in a Turtle movie, I think.
So in And again, so this is where I'm super medium on this movie, because there's parts that are awesome, and then there's parts that I'm just like, okay, this is dragging a little bit. And like I said, the movie starts slow, but from the end of the second act through the third act, like, it just takes off. As soon as Raph gets back there, talks to Splinter, and then one of my favorite parts of the movie is when Splinter's like, all right, like, we're not going to fix this. I'm going with you guys to fix it. You know what I mean? Like, we're all going together. Like, we're all going to do this. And I always want to see Splinter in action, because especially in this one, I didn't know how I felt about him at first. I feel like he was like extra reserved, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I prefer a reserved Splinter to a crazy one, even though like the one from like the 87 cartoon, he was reserved sometimes, but then he does the curly technique, you know what I mean? So I was like, okay, I don't know how I feel about this Splinter, but then he's like, all right, I'm going with you guys to fuck shit up. I'm like, okay, I like this Splinter a lot right here.
Yeah. Yeah, because at the beginning, he almost seems like Rise Splinter, who's just like some goofball idiot who like sits around and watches TV. And it's like, I guess not. He's like that in the breakfast scene, but aside from that, he's pretty serious the rest of the movie,
Yeah.
actually.
He's very short-spoken for the most part, I feel like.
Yeah, he's like your generic like kung fu Pai Mei like
Yep.
character. Like, there's no way he could know something, but he just knows it somehow. And it's like like that. But yeah, I do think it's always cool to see like, okay, we got to bust out Splinter like at the end of this. Like shit got so serious, Splinter's got to have to come and kick some ass. And you see him kick some ass, and I love there's a point where he's like knocking the monster back into the portal. He's like, "Yep, still got it," and stuff. Yeah, and speaking of, we talked about Raph a lot, but while I think Casey's a bit too much of a man baby in this movie, that is kind of his plot. He has to learn to grow up. But also, I think the dynamic of Raph and Casey, the friendship of them, is so cool. They're such cool bros. Like,
yeah, that's again always one of my favorite bromances is the Raph and Casey relationship. Like, they just work so well together, because being somebody that's kind of like a loner type, like, it's cool that they're both loner types, but together they're a pair, you know what I mean? Like, it's just really cool that they like found each other like that, and they're both like the same exact hot-headed, testosterone-driven asshole. Like, they just really are like a perfect duo. They're not even foils for each other. They're literally the same exact dude. And again, Casey, I feel like is another thing that I'm very mid on. I don't hate his character in this one, but I don't love him. The one thing I do like is when he gets the metal mask. I don't know why I really like that. And I like how April gets to be badass at the end. She puts on that ninja getup and she's got the sword. Like that, I didn't see that coming. I was pretty stoked on that.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. The only thing I'll say is, well, the metal mask reminds me of Jason X, which isn't cool, but the metal mask was cool. But it is really cool to see April like kick ass. And it was cool that she's like a ninja now too. Because like, yeah, if you're hanging out with the Ninja Turtles and Casey Jones this long, you probably know how to kick some ass.
Right.
But the fact that they show her holding her own against Karai when they first get there kind of pissed me off. Like, no, Karai can murder April. Get that.
Oh yeah.
Like, that was like a little like, I call bullshit on that one, but it was still cool.
Yeah, because again, getting back to Karai, like, I know the thing you said you didn't like about her is she's just is very plain and ordinary, but like that's what I like about her. She's just some little girl that bangs with all these freaking mutants. You know what I mean? Like, she can
that
hold
sounds
her
really
own
dirty
with all these other characters, and like I said, she's just like stone cold. She's ruthless. Like, she doesn't. I don't know. She never has any of those weaknesses they give female characters a lot. Like, she is a straight up badass, and she's never simping for no dudes. Like, she's just, I don't know. Like, I really like Karai in this one.
I think probably the version of Karai that they made the most like, she's still a badass, but the one where she seems the most like she has those female character tropes is the 2012 version.
Yeah,
but
because again, that was definitely toned down for kids for sure, and definitely like because Leo is really in love with her in that one, isn't he?
Yeah, he's super in love with her.
Yeah, and then she gets turned into the snake bitch. Is that the one? Is that what she gets turned into?
Yeah, it's like a purple snake.
She gets turned into. I can't remember.
She's a snake. Yeah,
snake. Yeah.
Purple snake.
So yeah, I guess in that one she is a little bit. She does have those like female tropey tendencies, but. And again, I like in this one how she teamed up with the turtles at the end. Like, I don't know. I liked that dynamic a lot, and I really liked the foot soldiers in this one. I really liked the way they were designed. Like foot soldiers are, I don't know, they're always kind of the same, but always have their own feel. And I don't know if it was the bright red eyes that I really liked on this one, but I just really liked these foot soldiers, and I don't know why.
I thought it was cool the way they move. Like she would like just point and they would like they just like they just moved like they were like a gust of wind or something. Like it was, they were badass, and I like that. Even though they all kind of look the same, when you see them all standing together, there's like bulkier ones and like skinnier ones and shorter ones, and like, there are differences between them. So I'm guessing because this is based in the 1990 world. I guess now these are maybe adults. These foot soldiers, like they were teenagers, and now they've been foot their whole lives, and because they're not robots, I don't think, even though they have
they're definitely people in this one,
yeah. So I guess some of those kids they stayed true. They kept hanging out even when Shredder was gone. They kept hanging out in that little weird skateboard park indoors.
Right.
Also, I will say in the final battle, since we're talking about that. They did the portal in the sky trope that like everybody makes fun of, like Avengers did it, and like every movie does, like the big beam going into the sky. This movie did that before it was cool. They actually did it before like anyone else was doing it. So props on them for doing the portal in the sky first. Probably not first, but before.
I can't remember one that I've seen before that.
It was like before Marvel made it something you had to put in every movie.
Right.
So they do a weird thing. Speaking of Karai in the final battle, they after the final battle, they tease a sequel with the Shredder.
Yep.
Because she mentions that like someone's still alive that they're gonna have to meet with or something, and they're like, "You don't think she means the Shredder?" And it's like, "Till next time," kind of thing. But
because they don't even say it though. I don't even think they say Shredder, do they? I think he says, "You don't think she means," and then I think that's all he says.
They might. I think maybe Mikey whispers Shredder or something. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe like I just put that in there myself because I know it's Shredder they're talking about.
But again, she also just says someone from your past, and you assume it's Shredder, but it could be something different too. So, but again, we're never gonna know. And that was like my final thought that I had on this movie. Is that it sets up the sequel and we'll never know what the idea was for it. And that bothers me a lot.
So, there actually was a script that like an old Turtle Den covered it years ago. I remember that there was going to be a sequel, and it was actually going to be about Mikey joining the Foot Clan. And like Mike kind of going to the dark side and then having to get brought back. But that got shelled, obviously. Like they couldn't make anything out of this, and I think they did have big plans. They might have even wanted to make an animated series, because for the action figure line for this movie, they were like 2-packs, and they'd have like Leonardo and like whatever, like Karai or something, or I don't remember who they made, but they made a Triceraton toy like in this movie's art style, like as part of this movie's toy line. There is no Triceraton in this movie.
No.
So I think they even made a Shredder toy too. I think there was a Shredder. So it's like they were planning stuff. I mean, we see like an artistic interpretation of what Shredder would look like in this design in the exposition at the beginning. They show him real quick. So like, I think they were planning to make this a bigger Turtles universe, but this thing was like DOA. Like it didn't stand a chance. Like I think it just completely bombed like when it came out.
Yeah, which again, I get it, because I feel like this was maybe the darkest age of the Turtles. I feel like kind of the twilight of the 2003 series before the 2012 series came out was probably about the lowest point in Turtle popularity. So it could have been a combination of things, of just the movie not being Dynamite itself, but also just interest being probably at an all-time relative low for Turtles.
I do think if they had just waited like 2 more years, like if they waited till like 2009, 2010, probably 2010, if they put this out then, it probably would have been huge.
Yeah.
But I think like, so that's one thing I like about this movie a lot, is when I go back and watch it, it really reminds me of what like the geek culture scene was like at that time, where honestly, 2007, 2008, 2007 to 2009 were probably my least favorite years personally of my life. I don't like who I was then, but I think the geek world was awesome. I remember like that's when I got into like Angry Video Game Nerd, and he was like blowing up, and he was doing videos about Ninja Turtles and stuff like that. And all these YouTubers started popping up talking about all these nerdy things. And then Motu Classics came out and all this stuff, and like it was starting to be it was starting the modern era of like just celebrating pop culture, and it was like just becoming a thing then. But now it's all being celebrated for us by corporations, and they tell us to buy their celebrations. Whereas back then, like the fans were celebrating all this stuff. So I think like that was a really cool time to be like an 80s kid or like a 90s kid. Unfortunately, though, I think this came out a bit too early, where like it was starting on YouTube and stuff at that time and social media, but like it hadn't gotten to a commercial level yet of cashing in on that kind of stuff. And like, they tried it in the early 2000s with like He-Man and Turtles, the new cartoons, and those they clicked with younger audiences, but not the OG fans. So, which obviously there's exceptions, but most OG fans didn't click. So I think like this was just like a couple years off. If this had just come out like 2 years later, and like the Turtle Mania nostalgia craze was like in full swing, I think it would have done a lot better, honestly.
For me, that area was, I mean, I just graduated high school, and I mean, I was just partying all the time. I wasn't really paying attention to like anything, you know what I mean? Like I wasn't really with anything outside of like huge blockbuster movies I was going to see. And I mean, I was playing video games all the time. That was when my Call of Duty phase and Gears of War phase were, I mean, that's literally all I would do is party and play video games. So yeah. I again, and that's just why, to me, that's probably my darkest age of my nerddom for sure, is like my late teens to early 20s, like probably 19 to 23 is when I was like the least connected to all this stuff.
I would probably say the same. I'd probably say for me, it's probably like, probably 19 to 23, right? From 19 to 22 or 23 is probably like, I was still into it, but I was like very casually into it. I was mostly like hanging out with a bunch of losers that I don't even consider friends anymore. Like, I was, like you said, playing a lot of video games and stuff, and like just kind of enjoying being a quote unquote adult for the first time. Like I wasn't really paying attention. I wasn't like following new iterations of things from my childhood. Like I said, I was like rebuying the old action figures at the time, but it's like, I wasn't following like new Turtle stuff. Like I was still at that time saying the 2003 cartoon was garbage because like I didn't like anything that wasn't like my thing. I didn't follow what was coming out on cartoon channels and stuff. Like I didn't do any. I barely ever saw a movie, like you said, only if it was a huge blockbuster movie. But yeah, so it was a weird release time, I think, and even though it is a little reminiscent of like the pop culture of the 2000s, like, April looking like a Bratz doll. And in the final rap in the end of the movie, they reference Bebop and Rocksteady at the beginning of it.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
They also reference Ugg boots. And that's like, that's 2000s. And then like in the song ends where the rappers are like telling your mama jokes to each other. And then like earlier in the movie, like Mike tells a your mama joke and everything. And then Don's like, my mom is your mama, Mike. Like, but like, it's like all the kind of stuff that was so big in the 2000s. But I think more than that is like, it is a bit more timeless, I think, than some other products of the 2000s, where I think it more so tapped into like that, that fandom kind of part of the 2000s, where we kids who grew up being fans of all these cartoons in the 80s and 90s were like in our 20s now, and we're working jobs and stuff, and we're like adults for the first time. So I think in that way, it captures that essence of that time of my life, I guess, pretty well, because, or at least the life of people whose lives were better than mine pretty well, because it does feel like it's kind of made for like, hey, do you like watching Angry Video Game Nerd and stuff? Here's the Turtle movie for you when you're in your 20s. But so like, I do like that it reminds me of that very strongly. But yeah, it's I think it's yeah, I think it's solid. I don't know. I think it's a good movie, but
Yeah,
I like
for me, like I said, it's very middle of the road. The good parts are really, really, really good. There just wasn't enough of them, and they weren't spaced out enough. Like I feel like if I was rating from the midpoint on, I would give it like an A minus. But then that beginning part is more like a C minus. So I feel like it kind of averages out to like C plus B minus for me.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, when I did my ranking, I put it as my number 4 on my top, like out of the 6 Turtles movies. It didn't make the top 3. I think technically it's a way better movie than Out of the Shadows, though. I put Out of the Shadows on there just because it did so many things I wanted to see as a kid, like Bebop and Rocksteady in a movie and stuff. But like technically as a movie, this movie is way better than Out of the Shadows. But the first 2 are still always going to be the top 2 for me.
Yeah.
But there's no beating the 1991 for me. But yeah, I think it's good. I think it did actually do mostly what it had to do at that time. I think the only thing it did miss is that I appreciate that it did like a weird, zany new story with new characters and villains and stuff. But I think if they really wanted to capture that generation, like, you know, the guys in their 20s who grew up with Turtles as kids, they really could have like used Krang or something that would have like brought them in. If they had seen Krang or Bebop and Rocksteady or something in the trailers, even Rat King or something, I think it would have brought some of those like 80s, 90s kids into the theaters.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a wrong place at the wrong time, and like not quite what the fan base was I can't say what the fan base was hungry for, because they weren't hungry for anything at that
Exactly.
time.
And that is just the biggest problem, I think, too. Is wrong, like I said, wrong place at the wrong time. And I mean, it just couldn't have been more of the wrong time. Like I feel like this probably was about the worst time for a Turtles movie to come out.
It probably was. We do have to talk though, because last week we ranked all the turtle designs. Has your placement of the 2006 Turtles designs changed? Do you like or hate them more than you used to?
Exactly the same. I feel no different. I still do not like these designs. Especially after watching the movie now, like I don't like the way that their bandanas like don't sit snug on their head. Like that wraps is the worst. I don't know why. It's more like a crown than it is a bandana. Like I don't know. That just really bothers me. And again, to me, they just look like I just can't stop thinking of Pepe now when I see them. But their bodies, I'll give their bodies more credit than I gave them before, but it's their head sculpts are just what I really don't love.
Yeah, that's fair. I think Michelangelo's face is horrendous.
Yeah, and I don't know why does Mikey's head just always have to look the worst. It makes no sense. And again, I think Leo looks the best in this one. I know you didn't really like his face that much, but I think him and Donnie probably look the best.
I think he and Raph look the best. I think Leo looks kind of okay in this movie. I think just the Turtles' faces in general at first take me a second to get used to, and Leo's the first one you see.
Yeah.
So that's why I said Leo's face kind of like threw me off. But I actually think Leo's one of the best looking ones. It's between he or Raph, I think, are the best looking. One thing that's a bit weird though is like Leo has so many like eyebrow forehead wrinkles like above his eyes. Like when he moves his eyes, there's like so much wrinklage like that. But they don't bother me that much. The designs, really only Mikey's. They're a little weird looking. They have those like flat noses and the weird teeth and all, but I don't know. They don't bother me that much, honestly. I've grown to like him a little more, except for Mike. Mike is just
still none for me.
Yeah. I'll say like April's kind of weird looking too. Her body is like someone just grabbed it and like she's made out of rubber. She's like a Stretch Armstrong or something.
Well, yeah, I mean her waist is about this big around, and then I mean she's pretty thick with it in the other places. So yeah, very weird proportions on her for sure.
I feel like Karai's a little more thicked out on the bottom, where I think like April just keeps getting smaller as she goes down. Like she's like a needle. Like she was weird. Like in Casey's face looks like someone grabbed his chin and yanked on it and like stretched him out. Like they're a little weird. Winters has a weird looking face too, but I appreciate they did ambitious character designs though, because you look at a lot of CG human characters, like the humans in Shrek look terrible. Because they're trying to make them look realistic and stuff, but like they're cartoons, so it's this weird, like stiff. Like, I think at least they tried to give them like cartoony proportions and stuff in this movie. I think I applaud them for that. But yeah, I think not the best movie by any means, but solid Turtles movie.
Exactly. Definitely not the worst. Like I said, for me, it's probably mid-tier. It's probably below all the original movies, but above the Michael Bay movies for me, for sure.
Yeah, I would say definitely if you've never watched it, I would definitely say go check it out.
It's worth watching. After watching it, I would suggest to anybody to watch it if you haven't. It's definitely worth a go. Again, slow in the beginning, but towards the end, it gets pretty good.
Yeah. I don't know what streaming services might be on for free. Maybe
Nothing.
Paramount?
It's
Nothing?
on nothing right now. Yeah.
I got it. I rented it on Amazon for $3 in HD. So
yeah. And again, I have the combo DVD, but my DVD player in my living room is broken, so I can't go from one movie to the next. I can just click on whatever movie comes up first, and that's the second one on the DVD. So I would have had to come back here to watch it, and I really wanted to watch it in my living room, so I just rented it again anyway.
I did a lot too. There's some like, I mean, they're VHSs, but I have them all set up ready to go. There's so many movies I have over there. Like, I'll just watch them on streaming on the TV right over here because it's like, I don't feel like getting up and taking it out and putting it in. But yeah, good movie, definitely worth a watch. And just it's kind of an interesting one because it's at like the weirdest point in Turtles history. So
yeah. All right, you guys. Well, that's all we got for this one. So hope you enjoyed it and catch you in the next one.
Peace.
Peace.